All right, everyone, welcome into Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. Of course, if you've listened to our Spotify version of these episodes, you've heard that song. Uh, Essentially, it's going to be our de facto theme song because it's a Brazilian song with English lyrics. It just makes a lot of sense for a Brazilian/American sports podcast. But you are into Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, the fourth episode. And I promise this week will be a little more on topic. Of course, if you watched this last week, I got to see my Atlanta Braves win the World Series for the first time in 26 years live right here on uh, this particular podcast, this show. A very special moment, one of the most special moments I've ever had as a sports fan. And certainly I'm still glowing about it here 8 days later. Um, so, yeah, obviously nothing of that magnitude going on tonight. But that gives us some time to talk about some other topics that we were meaning to talk about before. And I don't know, I'm ready to get into some good discussion. How about you, Gus? I know you've been busy today, been calling soccer games down there in Brazil.
Yeah, big game, big day. I was calling a second division game here on our kind of regional team where I live in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil. Guarani 1-0 versus Brazil off Pelotas, not the country Brazil. It's like a nickname, but it's good week, busy week. A lot of soccer. I'm watching right now a soccer game between Fortaleza and São Paulo. So lots to talk about, and let's dive into our opening topic.
Yeah, I will say too, I'm watching the Tennessee Lady Vols. I've seen one of the most historical women's basketball teams in the entire country. Basically, the team that didn't invent women's basketball, but basically helped popularize, of course, the legendary Pat Summitt, one of the most important women's sports figures in just sports history, period. The Women's Basketball Hall of Fame is in Knoxville, so you may hear us reference them at certain points throughout basketball season. Unfortunately, they are struggling a lot tonight with Southern Illinois, even though they're ranked number 15. Currently down 35-34. Their star, Ray Burrell, got hurt. Hopefully she's okay. I know our friend Chloe Levering over at WTK 90.3 Rock Solid Sports. Shout out to them. She's covering that game, so go follow their coverage on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all the various social platforms that they inhabit. But yeah, hopefully they pull this one out because they're definitely struggling a little bit. And we're going to talk a lot more about college basketball. I want to dive into the Vols last night, and I'm very excited to see where they go. But we're going to kind of do just kind of a sort of a recap topic here, but just kind of just where we are right now. Because the coronavirus, I know we're all sick of talking about it, but it's still a thing that exists in our world. And it's still wreaking some havoc in sports. Now, obviously, we're back to a point where all sports are happening, and we got fans back in the stands. We got full crowds back in stands, at least in America. I know Brazil, they're not there yet, and we're going to dive into
No,
that.
no, they are. Literally, they are. Brazil is 100%. I think it started 10 days ago. Yeah, 10 days ago. Yeah. There's fans. It's like, was so weird. I was watching the broadcast on TV, and the broadcasts were like, "Let's listen to the crowd." I was like, I'm so not used to that yet because I was still used to listen to fake sound and the silence. So, but here's 100%. All fans are normal.
Yeah, and like at this point, in America, like I'm used to full crowds again, and with college basketball especially, it's just so good to see if at least the ability to have a full arena. Of course, Tennessee didn't have a full crowd last night because they were playing UT Martin, so we won't see that until they play bigger teams like Kentucky and Florida later down the road. But like I know, like Kentucky Duke last night at Madison Square Garden on ESPN, that was a full crowd, and it was the first college basketball game that felt like a college basketball game since before the pandemic. Because I feel like more than any other sport, college basketball needs crowds, and the NBA is a distant second. Like basketball, the crowd is so much more just intimate and involved in the sport. Like in basketball, you can directly say something to a player, and they're gonna hear it. It's kind of part of the culture. You can think of like Spike Lee with the New York Knicks, or you think of like Drake a couple years ago with the Toronto Raptors. Fans on the side are such a massive part of the culture of basketball and jarring back and forth with the players. I remember being in the UT student section and like I remember this one dude. I think it was the West Virginia game. He was like calling because there's one of the players. His real name wasn't Oliver, but he was just calling him Oliver anyway, just to be derogatory. He was like saying, "I would beat you if you showed up at T-Rex, which is our school gym, and just all kinds of other stuff." Um, it's just a part of the game. And last year, I mean, I covered some of the UT games at Thompson Bowling Arena in Knoxville, and it was depressing because it wasn't loud, and it was just weird to have the piped in noise, and it didn't feel like.
No,
Um,
and I agree with you because when I started covering, soccer again here in Brazil, I remember my first game I went and it was so dark and it was a night game and it was so silent and I literally could hear the birds singing, the water like on the field. I could hear the players talking to the coach or even the players arguing with the referee, and now I can't not hear I can't hear that anymore. One part of me excited because I liked this kind of background, kind of like this intimate conversations, but at the same time listening to the fans again, that's revigorating.
Oh, absolutely! Like it's just I'm so excited to be in Neyland this weekend for Tennessee, Georgia. Like I can't wait to be back in that type of atmosphere, and just especially with how big that game could end up being. Obviously Georgia, they're trying to play for a national championship. Tennessee is trying to get some national respect again. Yeah, honestly, I don't think Tennessee has much of a chance of winning that game versus Georgia, but the crowd's going to show up. They're going to be loud, and we'll see what happens. I mean, anything can happen, especially in this crazy season of college football, because Georgia's been the only team that's been consistently like elite all season. But a lot of that really is their defense. I mean, their defense is insanely elite, but hopefully the kneeling crowd maybe can make some type of difference. But it's just
It,
great to see you.
and I was just mentioning the game at broadcast today, and on Saturday, they're gonna have a Guarani is gonna have a huge matchup in the second division versus Avaí. It's gonna probably be a decisive game, and even the coach was like begging for fans to show up. Please show up. We need you. So that's interesting. Like fans are needed right now, especially in this big moment. Like I bet Coach Hypo and the players who also want fans to show up in Neyland to help them at least. I know it's going to be very hard to beat Georgia. They're the best team in the country, but fans can make a difference. I saw that firsthand because when I went to cover a game last Thursday, it was one of the craziest games I ever covered in my entire life. It was 0-0 until the 44th second, and then was a penalty against Guarani on the away team Vasco, and then the crowd started chanting, believing, and then the guy lost the penalty, and then literally the next play, Guarani scored and won the game. And I bet the fans made a difference in that game. So that game showed me how fans can make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, I've even back in like high school football, I can remember games where I felt like the home crowd was propelling a team along to victory. I mean, it's just athletes naturally, right? You're humans, right? Like when you feel like you have people backing you, when you have people supporting you, you're that much more determined to get a win. Like and this even extends outside of sports, like in any realm of competition, academic competition, musical competitions, just any other competition of life. When you have a support system, you're gonna perform better. And fans ultimately are an extension of that support system. Even though you don't know all of those fans in the stands personally, like your family or your friends, that helps a lot. That just helps you a lot from a moral standpoint, from an emotional standpoint. You want to feel like you have people behind you that are supporting you. And people who lose those fans, that feel like everything's against them, there's a certain type of person that can thrive on that and be the villain, be the heel. But a lot of people just can't do that. People want to be liked. They want to be the good guy. And, I think it's bothered a lot of players during this coronavirus situation to not play in front of anyone.
And it was funny to mention about villains because now the coronavirus, they kind of brought up new, I would say, for some people, heroes and for others, villains.
Right. And it's time to get into a controversy. I just thought about it. I put on a green shirt here and I didn't mean to make it so ironic, but we're going to talk about the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, everyone's favorite topic, of course. I don't know how. I'm sure many of you have seen his interviews with Pat McAfee over the past couple of days, discussing his stance on why he hasn't taken the vaccine. And of course, obviously, he tested positive for COVID, so he wasn't able to play last week at Kansas City, and they ended up losing the game 13-7. Jordan Love was not very good. And I'm more than certain that they would have won the game with Aaron Rodgers if he was the quarterback. And the question is here. Obviously, with COVID protocols the way they are, Aaron Rodgers has to be out, right? Because if you test positive for COVID and you're not vaccinated, um, the NFL deems you as more of a risk to transmit the virus. But when you look at the backlash, and that's really what I want to focus on, because regardless of what anyone thinks about Aaron Rodgers, and there's a million different opinions on this. Like, you just go to any comment section, you go on Twitter, you go on YouTube, on just any video whatsoever. Like, I remember going through the live chat, the Pat McAfee interview, and it's insane because like half of the people are like, Aaron Rodgers has every right. He's an athlete. No, very few athletes have had any serious complications from this. But then on the other side, you have a lot of people saying, it's your social responsibility to take it. Like, I'll admit, I've taken a vaccine. I've gotten my booster shot. I urge everyone to go get one. But, obviously, and that's a whole other discussion of should you or should you not force people to get it. But how, moving forward, will people see Aaron Rodgers? And, obviously,
and, and even how people see those big star athletes that are going against something that feels very necessary. Like Kyrie Irving is in the same boat, even harder because the NBA where he's playing right now, he literally can't play. So Aaron Rodgers just lucky he plays in Wisconsin because I guess if he played for the Jets or the Giants, he wouldn't be able to play.
Yeah, there's certain states. I think if you were like for the 49ers or like the Seahawks, obviously a really, really left leaning city that has much stricter COVID protocols versus a Wisconsin that's a swing state. And obviously, northern Wisconsin itself is not a very like progressive part of the country. So, yeah, they're not going to have as strict regulations. And I think a part of it, too, is football is an outdoor sport. So there's less of, I guess, a concern of transmission during the game itself. And of course, obviously, most of the transmission that we're seeing is happening from outside of the games themselves. But I don't know, because like I can understand if people have concerns with the vaccine, right? Because anything that you put in your body, I think you have to self scrutinize. And of course, I don't think a lot of people do this from day to day. They don't think about, oh, what does this food do to me? They don't think about the Little Debbie they eat that has 40 grams of sugar, even though 50 grams is a full day's worth of sugar, or about the 12-ounce Coke they drink, even though you drink those every single day, it's going to clog up your.
Whoa. I don't know. Is he for real?
I'm pretty sure that has to be a meme. That sounds like a Barry McCockner comment. If you know him, Sports Jocks Joe, that's I think directly from Barry McCockner. But anyway, just
Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank you for watching.
Also, shout out to Rodrigo Matos in Brazil here listening as well. But and it's funny how Aaron Rodgers play with words, and I guess he likes to be. He is the center of attention, and he doesn't like that attention. But then he got it because he knew it was a ticking time bomb. He knew that.
Yeah, it was really strange because like he said he didn't want to be political, that he doesn't want to go on Fox News or CNN, which I can admire. Like, cable news is terrible. Like, you shouldn't watch cable news. That's just my personal opinion there. But then he talking about just he was just putting everything in the very political terms, and which is just a reflection of just how unfortunate the conversation around the vaccine has become. Like, because it should have never become political in the first place.
And it's funny how in Brazil there's not a single player that I can think of that has, go saying that, he's unvaccinated or against the vaccines. There's not a single player here in Brazil. Everybody went to get their shots.
It's been a uniquely American phenomenon. Yeah, I mean, and obviously Matt Nagy is absolutely correct. There's nothing in the vaccine that people haven't been exposed to, like RNA, mRNA. Like, do you really think? And I'm not saying the government's perfect by any stretch of the imagination. They are not. Not. They're not. They don't do a lot of good stuff. But when it comes to vaccines, just look at vaccines historically. Like vaccines have ended polio. They've ended like stuff like the whooping cough. I mean, not completely ended them, but basically make them to the point where we only have a handful of cases per year. And obviously, with this COVID, it's not going away ever. Like it's going to be a part of our ecosystem forever. But, we have a choice here between, you know, letting it just continue rampantly on forever or like getting it to a place where you can control. And obviously, he's bringing up ivermectin. And, that was another topic of
Oh,
conversation with Aaron
ivermectin.
Rodgers, the whole situation with the
Oh,
fourth phase.
ivermectin here was ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Oh, hydroxychloroquine.
Oh
I
yeah,
cannot even
that was
hear.
like the OG like crazy medicine, right? Because like you remember this, was like a couple in Arizona that drunk it. They drank their fish tank cleaner, and like one of them died from it.
No, hydroxychloroquine was like the official medicine promoted by the president here. But I mean, it was
Yeah,
insane. Now, and another point in terms of COVID in Brazil, that America didn't want to go there. I thought, and Brazil went there, and I was skeptical at first, but it seems to be working. Is the so-called vaccine passports, like the mandatory showing that you took the vaccines to get into the soccer games here. And oh yeah, that's true, man. Nagy, Cairo Santos. That, by the way, I'm still waiting for him to interview with me.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my,
He almost won the game the other night. It was about 5 to 10 yards short, so
yeah.
very
Oh,
very close.
Cairo. Oh, Matt Nagy, please, ask Cairo Santos to, come in an interview with me. I don't know if you're the real Matt Nagy or not,
Yeah,
but still,
I really hope it isn't because that would not be a great sign for the Chicago. I mean, it'd be a pretty big win for us if that's the real Matt Nagy. But Matt Nagy needs to focus right now on not losing his job
yeah. But we
because he's
appreciate
probably getting
people
fired after this
watching.
year.
People watching.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't know why you guys tried out to Cairo Santos, but Justin Fields was incredible in that fourth quarter. And from the distance, like you didn't have unless you have Justin Tucker, you should not be trying out. And even then, even if I had Justin Tucker in that situation, I would have tried out because remember, Justin Tucker hit a 66-yard field goal in Detroit inside Ford Field. This was outside at night in colder conditions. I just don't think, even as someone as great as Tucker could have hit that in that situation. It's a completely different situation than the Detroit 66-yard field goal. So it's just, I think Justin Fields has a great arm. So I think that was your best scenario. Maybe you get a pass interference, although the refs were, let's just say, not very friendly to Chicago the other night,
Oh,
which was
we
very
have
unfortunate.
one thing that we can talk in a next, in a later show, and I wish you could find out more about that. Is comparing referees in the countries, because here in Brazil, referees are, even though VAR isn't being introduced, they are making mistakes that even before VAR they did not, they didn't make. So that's something, I mean, because I guess also in football, college or pro, also referees are being kind of, blamed or even, kind of villainized recently. But my football team is the New York Jets.
And
I
mine
like
is
the
the Tennessee Titans. So,
and
yeah.
so going back to our topic, and why do you think, Nick, America didn't, you know, because in Brazil has been working so well, the vaccine passport, people having to show up their vaccine, paper or whatever they took it. I haven't seen one complaint about it. I haven't seen one, people complaining to be delayed. Everybody's ready. They just show the paper. Even my CDC vaccine passport was accepted here in Brazil. I thought I was going to have more trouble to explain. No, they were okay. They've been working. And because I remember when some colleges try to put that for college football games, we were like, "Oh my god, it's going to be so hard! Oh my god, it's going to be a nightmare!" And at least here in Brazil has been fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing in America, and also shout out to Matt, to Matt Nagy or whoever you actually are working at Walgreens, giving people the vaccine. Definitely one of the unsung heroes of this whole thing, getting people the vaccine, because that's where I went and got my booster
A-
shot.
a- And I just want to know, where are you watching from, Matt? Thanks for
Yeah.
listening and
Don't,
watching
don't feel
live.
like, though, you have to self-identify or anything. So, comfortable space for everyone. But
No, of course. I just
yeah,
was curious because I just like having people listening for all over the world. Because again, two countries from America's all sports.
yeah. Of course, he's down in, yeah, obviously
Oh,
Chicago, the Windy City.
Chicago.
Yeah, I've only been to
Nice.
Chicago once. I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee. He's from Sao Paulo, no, Americana, Sao Paulo,
Americana.
Brazil. Yeah,
Yes.
so we know each other from Knoxville from our days there. But yeah. So back on the
The
topic of
vaccine
America.
passport. That's called.
Yeah,
I like this. I hate this term, vaccine passport, because it's so like, you're not leaving the country. You just need to bring one document. And in Brazil here, they even have tents to do COVID tests, literally by the stadium.
yeah. I just a big part of it's federalism. Obviously, all of these different states have different regulations. I know, like in New York, California, places like that, you got to have a vaccine card to get into like a bar, a concert, stuff like that. But obviously, here in Tennessee and other places, you don't, because there's a cultural difference there. There's fears that you approve this, it's going to be a slippery slope to other things, and you know, I mean, personally, I'm somewhat torn on it because I think obviously, as I've stated, I want everyone to get the vaccine, and I think private businesses should have the right to make that choice whether or not um, they want only vaccinated people to come on in. And obviously, the governmental institutions are different in that aspect. But I think it's just a cultural thing, and I think that a lot of it comes down to propaganda that's been spread through um, the that's been spread through Facebook and other platforms, and and it's just it doesn't make any sense why this all of a sudden became the straw line, because you have to have other vaccinations to go to school. Like you've got to have your hepatitis B shot, and you got to have this shot and that shot. Your baby when they're the kid when they're going to kindergarten has to have a list of shots before going into school. Like they got to have their
Yeah,
shingles
here
shots, their
here in
whooping
Brazil
cough shot.
too. Yeah,
And
here
it's
in Brazil.
just I don't know where because we used to not question those, right? Because outside of a handful of people like anti-vaxxers used to be the joke of the
Ridicularized.
society. Like we used to mock all of them because they're just like, you're ridiculous. Like why would you not protect yourself from all these diseases that we know are extremely harmful to millions and millions of people and are still rampant in third world countries all over the world because we haven't been able to get a lot of those vaccines to those places. But for some reason, over the past year, and there's, you can draw your own conclusions of why this happened, and I'm sure you can read the subtext there. Uh, a lot of people have just jumped on this bandwagon. I feel like a lot of it's just to be contrarian because they want to feel like they're going against the man. They want to go against the the current
Establishment.
president. And
And
even
and
though
also,
literally Trump was pushing the vaccines at the end of last year, so it's just and it's crazy now because President Trump, when he goes and tries to push the vaccine at his current rallies, he gets booed. It's like you created a monster that you can't even control. It's just unbelievable. And Matt makes a
and,
great point. The whole 98.8 survival rate, despite these people who have long COVID, all these people who we don't know how this is going to affect you and what it could show up as, because this is different than a flu. This is a novel virus. We're getting a grasp of it, every so often, but we're still only 2 years into this.
but it mentioned cultural. Like, for example, I think, for example, here in Brazil, Bolsonaro, the current president, has stated time and time again that he is not vaccinated, but people don't care. Even it's only some like really hard die followers probably didn't got vaccinated. Even see like people that are his followers that would have voted for him just were maybe pick and choose which vaccine they wanted. They kind of chose one Pfizer instead of CoronaVac. That's all I knew. because here in Brazil, a lot of people cannot afford to go to the hostel, not because of money issues, because public hostels are not good. Like right now in my city, there's a chaos. The city hostel is literally with people lying in beds, in the bad treatment. So, people taking the vaccine is like, hey, give me this shot because I literally don't want to go standing in a public hostel and risking of dying in this disease. So, and in
Yeah.
sports, the fans have been really promoting vaccines because they wanted to go back to crowd safety, and now the crowds have been back, and the state of São Paulo recorded for the first time, I think early this week, 24 hours with no COVID death whatsoever, zero
Yeah.
COVID deaths.
It's going to be a while before we see that in America. Yeah, and there's so many vaccines we're just throwing away that could be going to other countries. And like literally, like this is the only country in the world that people are just refusing to take the shot. Like just take the shot. Like very 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 few people are having any complications from this. At worst you are most likely to not feel really anything outside of maybe a sore arm, which is what I had. You may have like
Yeah,
a
what I
slight
had to.
cold or something, but like outside of that, like I was fine. Like I was up and moving the next day. Like I had J&J for my first one, and then for the booster I had Pfizer. And I was kind of concerned about mixing them, but you know, it's fine. And I feel
And,
safe going out and
and,
about
and
because
now
I had
I thanks for the information, by the way, because now it makes me feel safe, maybe to maybe get a booster shot here in Brazil, because I got Moderna, and I was like, oh man, I have to take it in Brazil, but now I guess I will. But I only think I feel like players could do more promo here, and I think they in America too, to push people to get vaccinated. But I think in Brazil they don't need, because vaccination has been so accepted. People have been so willing. The only problem is people who took the first shot coming back to the second shot. But I think it will solve. I think in probably in a month or two. But and with Matt said, every time I give a shot, we tell them to wait. Yeah, I remember 10 to 5,
yeah.
10 to
I literally
15
got
minutes.
my shot in a massive ballroom at the University of Tennessee, and I was probably around 100 other people who got the shot, and I didn't see anyone fall out or show any signs of having trouble. It's just it's just an absolute disgrace how this whole situation has gone. And I think, like, kind of to wrap up this topic, what responsibility should sports stars have when it comes to this in terms of promoting the vaccine? Should we all of them be promoting it? Should um, people like Aaron Rodgers be widely disgraced for their stances on the coronavirus? Because I mean, at the end of the day, in America, you have the freedom of speech, right? So we can't necessarily trample on that. But just because you have freedom of speech doesn't mean you have freedom of consequence. Particularly when this situation could be life and death, or is life and death for millions of Americans. Even though you might be a healthy young individual who doesn't have any other pre-existing conditions, like there are millions and millions of other Americans who do. So I don't know, just this whole thing. It just makes me sad and angry because it feels like we could have gotten a grasp on this situation, but there are so many people with other interest who I feel like for just nefarious reasons are trying to convince all these people that you don't need the shot. It's evil and this
And,
and that, and it's just a shame.
and that's why it's funny to have a podcast about the two countries, because in Brazil here I felt so proud of my country. Brazil butchered 2020. Brazil did badly. There was not really a lockdown, or and there was a lot of, especially in the public transportation, Brazil is more reliant on that, compared to America. A lot of people don't have cars, and there was a bad kind of like 20 Brazil butchered 20. But 2021, Brazil has been awesome. People have been taking the vaccine. 75% of the country, I think, at least has one shot. I think it's like 50 to 55% has fully like fully vaccinated. All the players, as far as I seen on October 15, the majority of soccer players in the first division already have been vaccinated. And Brazilian teams were so eager to get vaccinated. I remember big controversy in Brazil. There were some teams that were playing an international tournament. I think it was last year or the beginning of this year. I'm going to try to remember. they got the vaccine in Paraguay, that the South American Soccer Confederation got those vaccines to immunize, and people were mad they took it first. They were mad because they say, why they got privilege to take the vaccine over other people. But no player were like, oh, I was forced by, I had to take it. Everybody took it. People were mad because of the opposite, because they felt that those players were privileged. I bet in America will be the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to click my thoughts real quick.
Yeah, it
You
was
know, because
made.
I don't remember there was discussion over who should get it, and because obviously frontline workers and obviously older people and those with compromised immune systems in many places were given it first. But yeah, I don't know how people would have really cared, because I think because you would have had a select portion of the population that would have just talked about that would have just said, oh, it's just all for show and it's all for like this and that. Because I remember when like politicians were coming out, like I remember when President Biden came out and got a shot like in front of cameras, or like Kamala Harris came out and got a shot in front of cameras. People were just like, oh, they're not actually getting the shot, like this and that. And it's just ridiculous. Some people are just it's like this political commentary I watched, Kyle Kalinske, he says they're TFG, they're too far gone, and it's just an unfortunate thing. And and Matt also brings up an interesting point here about how there's a crowd of NFL fans that are comparing the Henry Ruggs and Aaron Rodgers situation. And I guess we could start to transition over into just the other football topics here, because yeah, that
Just
Henry.
real quick to wrap up the COVID situation, because it's so funny that I haven't seen any reports from the NFL teams or any professional teams in America like saying how many players were vaccinated or not. But there's a report here that was produced by a newspaper here in Brazil mid-October, saying how many players got one shot or fully vaccinated, and only one team has more than 10% of the players not vaccinated. And only two teams had non-vaccinated players. 18 out of 20 teams in Brazil have all people at least one shot or fully vaccinated.
Yeah, and what'll be interesting to watch moving forward too is now that kids are now finally getting vaccinated as well, from ages 5 to 11. It'll be interesting what the battle zone looks like there, because school districts have to determine whether or not they're going to add that to their vaccine requirements. And um, as we have seen with school board meetings and everything else, it's just those are war zones right now. Parents passionately arguing both sides on many different topics. But
And again, here in Brazil, if they, and I don't think there's going to be a problem. That's some surprise. If there comes a time that kids will be vaccinated in Brazil, I don't think there's going to be any argument. And I saw and there were no arguments with school boards here or any like schools about kids wearing a mask or not. Like I normally pass by like some preschools here, and I see kids playing with masks and no problem. So it's so funny to see that for all the things, Brazil is the place where people just are conscious about it. But that's interesting. So let's get to some football talks, because our man Matt has been some interesting comments.
Yeah, the Henry Ruggs situation, comparing that with the Aaron Rodgers, which is just, it doesn't make any sense, because obviously, Aaron Rodgers made a dumb decision for himself. Fortunately, it looks like he's going to be fine. He'll be able to come back and play football. We'll see what social damage he takes in terms of sponsorships and stuff like that. And also a good point here that CeeDee Lamb got fined more for untucking his jersey, which is just insane, because I think the NFL has gotten far more bad PR from the Aaron Rodgers situation. But this Henry Ruggs situation, and then really just the Las Vegas Raiders as a whole, it's a disaster of an organization. I mean, you have obviously the John Gruden situation from a few weeks ago, where he gets fired for racist, sexist, misogynistic emails. Henry Ruggs kills a woman going 156 miles an hour with a .162 DUI. The woman and her dog literally burn alive. It's just a horrific story. And Henry Ruggs, I mean, my God, I mean, just what a waste of talent. Like, this dude was one of the fastest receivers like in the NFL. Like, I've watched him since he was at Alabama, tortured my balls, and it's just a shame. Like, you had it made, and you had to go blow it on one night of partying. And like literally, the NFL has a specialized service, like an Uber service for these players to avoid these situations. And I just don't know why he didn't use it. And he's going to have to think about that for many years to come when he's in prison, where he deserves to be for that, because it just that's just uncalled for. I mean, that's just straight up murder right there. I mean, I know it's a vehicular homicide technically, but you get behind the car that intoxicated. I mean, you're
Eh, And
yeah.
it's funny. It reminds me of a situation that happened in 1996 when a big, big, big soccer star here in Brazil, Edmundo, he was also drunk and he caused a car accident that killed 3 people. But in the end, with a length, trials and everything, he still is not arrested. He didn't serve in jail. So it's just interesting. Sometimes here in Brazil, players just seem sometimes above the law. I think America is better with that kind of situation.
Yeah, we don't play with this stuff over here because it just feels like it happens a lot. Even though there's been a lot of education done around about it, just people just continue to make stupid decisions when it comes to that. And I really urge anyone listening to this, if you're drunk, it's not worth it. I don't care what you have to go to, where you think you have to go to next. It's not worth it. Get a Lyft, get an Uber, or just stay where you are. Um, or if you're gonna go out, make sure that you have those plans. Like make sure you have a DD if you can, or all right, I'm going to go and take an Uber to this place or a Lyft to this place or whatever, or, I can walk to this place. Do not risk it. It is not worth it. Um, no matter how much fun. And I'm not condoning him for going out and having fun, like everyone should go and have fun sometimes, but have a plan. Like it's a part of just being responsible. And clearly he was not responsible. But the Las Vegas Raiders' troubles are not done there because Damon Arnett gets on Instagram and starts waving his gun around, threatening to kill fans who were criticizing him. So now he's off the team, and the Raiders go on to lose to the Giants this weekend. And it's just, you got to feel bad for every other person in that organization because, like, especially like someone like a Derek Carr and a Darren Waller, because they're just out here trying to play football, have a good season. They're 5-3 right now. They're in the middle of a division championship race, and they just can't catch a break of how crazy their organization is. Like it's unfortunate. Like I feel bad for Raiders fans because and Matt Nagy points out in 2019, that was their 2 first-round picks, both handpicked by a head coach that's no longer even there. Like that, if you look for their first 4 rounds picks, only one player, Brian Edwards, is still a significant contributor for the team. And that's because Henry Ruggs is no longer on the team. Um, it's an absolute disaster, and it's going to rear its head for the Raiders, I think, for a very, very long time. But I still think they have a decent team, but I just don't know how much more an organization can sustain this many just bad, disastrous PR situations. Gus, are there any teams in Brazil have ever had this many bad stuff, much bad stuff just happen back to back to back to derail a season?
That's a great. I mean, let me think. I mean, I'm trying to think. If there's any case like the Raiders, like a coach fire mid-season because of controversy, and then a player. Man, oh man, that's true. I should have thought about it because I mean, there were some key. I mean, the last team that kind of went off the rails, and I could even compare to the Raiders, like the 2009 Palmeiras, who were on the first place. They seem to be and then everything went bad. The players fight in the field. They changed the code mid-season, but I think I compare, like, it's. I don't remember a time when like something like that happened in Brazil. Like that was a great question because you know the Raiders, it's supposed to move to Vegas with a lot of excitement and a lot of energy, and they're still not bad in terms of standings, but they are mess in terms of PR.
Oh yeah, I feel terrible for the PR guys at the people who work in public relations over at um
Oh, I
yeah,
remember. I
over at
remember.
the Las Vegas
I
Raiders.
remember. The 2010 Flamengo also had a player who, killed his mistress in a very, very brutal way. According to the trial, according to the investigation, he ordered for her to be killed, dismembered, and the dogs ate her. I'm not kidding. and then he got arrested, and then they changed the coach mid-season, because the coach had a fight, and so that 2010 Flamengo, which literally came off of a title in 2009, they were, just 6 months, before all the craziness, they were the Brazilian champions, and then after that, a player got, you know, arrested, because he ordered his mister to be killed, and then they changed the coach because of controversy as well.
Yeah, I mean that's insane. I mean that probably the closest to what's happened with the Raiders this year. I don't know if they're going to ultimately make the playoffs. They're in a really tough division. We'll see where they go from here. Just overall, otherwise in football this weekend, the NFL had a ton of upsets. Like you had the Bills beating the the Jaguars beating the Bills 9-6, which that was just surprising. My Titans, without the King Derrick Henry, go into Los Angeles and win on Sunday Night Football 28-16. Just absolutely defensively dominated that game. I mean, one of the best defensive performances I've seen from the Titans in a very, very long time. You got to remember last year, the Titans' offense carried the team because the defense was just horrible, like the entire season. So it's great to see the defense do really, really well. And on the college side of things,
What a game!
Yeah, the Volunteers, because we both
I mean,
covered the Vols in Knoxville.
What an offense! I'm so staggered in the stat of time of possession. I'm still, not over the fact that Josh Harper really runs a really fast offense because they don't need so much time to score.
Yeah, we only had the ball for about 14 minutes in that entire game. And won. Like Kentucky literally had, I believe, the most time of possession ever by a college football team. They had the ball for 47 minutes in that game and lost. They had like nearly, I think it was like 500 yards of offense. They had like 30 first downs. Their quarterback threw for over 350 yards, and they lost. That's how efficient the Tennessee offense was. They had 6 scoring drives of 1 minute or less. And he also had a pick 6, and that's how they got to 45 points. And really, what was the most impressive part of that game? So the Vols, they stopped Kentucky with 16 seconds left in the second half. They have the ball around their own 40. And then Josh Heupel, instead of kneeling it, which previous coaches such as Jeremy Pruitt, Butch Jones, Derek Dooley, they would have sat on that ball and gone to halftime tied at 21. Josh Heupel calls 3 straight pass plays. Hendon Hooker hits all 3 of them to Cedric Tillman, and they were all the same play. They get down to field goal range, and we hit, and Chase Brodus, our kicker, hits a field goal to go up 24-21, and that ends up being the difference in the football game because we win 45-42. Like Josh Heupel, UCF fans weren't the most impressed with him. We weren't the most impressed with that hire, frankly. I remember doing the reaction show. But
we were like, oh, okay. I mean, it's nice.
But he has energy, and this offense is so much fun to watch. And like last year was the most brutal year of college football ever, and partially it was due to COVID, not having a full crowd. But my God, Jeremy Pruitt's team last year was just awful to watch. There was no energy. That offense was terrible. Jarrett Garantano was just one of the worst college quarterbacks I've ever seen. But now Hendon Hooker, 23 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. He is lighting it up. And they've got a really, really tough test next week this Saturday against Georgia. I will be there in Knoxville this weekend for homecoming. We're 21-point underdogs. We're probably going to lose because just Georgia's defense is unbelievable. Through 9 games, they've only given up 59 points. Like that's like 6.6 points per game. That I think right now would be like the best defensive output in like 50 years or something. Now, granted, I don't think any of the offenses they've played so far are great, and Tennessee, I think, is the best statistical offense they will have played. However, I don't think we're going to be able to run the ball very well, and I think Hendon Hooker will be under pressure a lot. The key to this game for the Vols, can Hendon Hooker hit some deep shots on this defense? Because if there's any weakness on the Georgia defense, it is their secondary. And like that Nick Saban, Kirby Smart defense, any team that's ever beaten them, it's a mobile quarterback who can throw downfield and get big plays. And Tennessee is able to do that because they don't really have a lot of trust in their defense right now. Not really because they're not playing hard. They are playing hard, but they're not good at getting off the field on third down, so they don't have a lot of depth. And against a team like Georgia that has all the depth in the world that you could ever want, I think that's going to play into their hands. That we're just not going to have enough. Even though I think they're going to come out, they're going to make their plays. Neyland's going to be rocking for, I think, a large part of this game. And really, I just want Tennessee to put on a show to really make Georgia sweat a little bit at the bare minimum. I'm going 41-21 Georgia. I think it could be an interesting game for a while, and it's going to take a lot of mistakes on the part of Georgia for us to have a shot in this one. Like, it's going to have to be like their 2019 game against South Carolina. And anything certainly is possible in the sport of college football, but I'm not banking on a win here. But I trust this team to come out and play hard and give it everything they've got. And compared to where my preseason expectations were for the Vols, I couldn't be more proud to be a Vol this year, man. It's been awesome to watch this team and how they've grown, and I'm excited to see where Josh Heupel can do with this team.
And speaking of the Vols, I think the Lady Vols escaped the upset.
Yeah, they're up 59-49. Not a pretty performance whatsoever. I'm very interested to see what Kelly Harper says in her post game, what Maria Cornelius, Chloe Levering, and all those other reporters are going to ask her, because it's going to be an interesting night. And obviously, Ray Burrell being injured is the big story. Can she recover from her injuries? Because Tennessee's going to need her, because the early part of this game I was watching, I mean, she was basically the entire offense for the Lady Vols, which is really concerning because, they lost for Nia Davis to the WNBA. And I believe she is an WNBA champion because she played with Candace Parker and won for the Chicago Sky. If I'm correct. She might have gone somewhere else.
You lost to Keshkiroa for the Brazilian League. She went to Sampaio Basquete.
Yeah. So
it would be really cool to bring her on our podcast because she literally, played basketball in Brazil. And of course, she, had a whole career in America.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think for this Lady Vols team, if Ray Burrell's out, it's going to be a rough road sledding moving forward because she is going to be the star on this team. Now, you still have to have some really good players. I think a lot of it will come down to players like Tamari Key, who's a center. You have Jordan Horston, who's a point guard. Those players are going to really have to step up for the Lady Vols if they're going to do well. But yeah, I don't know what their ceiling is without Ray Burrell because she is so important to this team this year. But since we're already on the topic of college basketball, let's go over to the men side. And obviously from a Vols perspective, the basketballs, as we like to affectionately call them, they're calling them the basketballs, basketball. The Tennessee men's basketball team, who have been really good over the past couple of years. Historically, the Tennessee basketball team has not been a great program, but they've had their moments. Of course, a lot of you may know them, the Ernie and Bernie show. You might have seen that ESPN documentary for the 70s. One of the first big peaks of Tennessee basketball. Then throughout the 80s and 90s, they weren't very good. But then in the mid-2000s, Bruce Pearl comes to Knoxville. The Tennessee basketball team explodes. They have players like Chris Lofton and Wayne Chisholm. They make an Elite Eight run. We're 1 point short of making the Final Four back in 2009. Still one of the most brutal losses, I think, ever I've suffered as a fan. Then throughout the 2010s, they kind of meander a little bit. They had Conzo Martin, who wasn't great. And then they had Donnie Tyndall for a year and he got busted for an NCAA violation back at Southern Miss.
I remember the Donnie Tyndall era. That's when I moved to Tennessee.
Yeah, that was an interesting year because I thought he was a decent coach, but we just didn't have good players at the time. But then in comes Rick Barnes. Who got fired at Texas. He had players like Kevin Durant and LaMarcus Aldridge there and was never able to win a national title there. He made it to one Final Four, comes to Knoxville. For a few years, we're not very good. But then 2017, Rick Barnes and this Tennessee team take off with Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield, and they eventually climbed to number one in the country. And I remember we were both covering the team at the time. They became number one. And just how special that team was. One of my favorite sports teams of all time to watch. Of course, they didn't make it all the way. They went to the Sweet 16 against Purdue. And then obviously the next year after that, they weren't very good with all those players leaving. But the season was shortened anyway due to COVID, so it didn't really matter. They got a free year. And honestly, even though it sucked, that March Madness didn't happen. In a way, Tennessee got lucky because they kind of got a free year to rebuild with really no consequences. And then last year, they bring in Keon Johnson, Jane Springer, along with Yves Pons and John Fulkerson. They had a decent top 20 team, but got upset first round by Oregon State. So here we are now, where Tennessee basketball is in a good place. We have a good program. We're bringing in good players. But just truly, how elite can Tennessee basketball be? So now you've got a player like Kenny Chandler, who is now going to be our starting point guard this year, and he is just incredible. I'm so excited to watch this guy play some big-time competition because I think this dude has it all. He's quick, he's athletic, he can shoot. Just absolutely electric on the offensive end. I think we got a lot of good shooters now. We got a player like Justin Powell from Auburn, and that's really, I think, where the team struggled last year. They couldn't shoot. They were not a good free-point shooting team. But this year, along with those two, I think Vescovi has gotten a little bit better from the free-point line. Santiago Vescovi from Uruguay.
Yeah. And he's a big soccer fan too. I saw his post. That's so funny.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely, most people from down there are massive soccer fans. But yeah, but I think this team has a lot of potential this year. I mean, they're preseason ranked number 18. And they solidly blew out UT Martin yesterday. It was a little close in the first half, but it was just the first game jitters, and they were able to pull away. They didn't have have John Fulkerson yesterday. He was their 6-year senior, who is going to go down as a Tennessee legend. Everyone in Knoxville and East Tennessee just loves that man, and he's one of the most just Tennessee players ever. He loves Tennessee. Tennessee loves him. He's going to go down as a legend here in the state of Tennessee, and he'll be sad to see him go after this season, but hopefully he'll be able to lead one run here in March later this season, because he didn't get to play in March Madness last year because a dirty player from Florida decided, I think it was Armari Payne, if I remember correctly, elbowed him in the SEC tournament, ending his season. Man, I can't remember being so mad ever over anything in basketball. Like, I was furious when that happened. I'm pretty sure we did like post game reactions for that, and I'm pretty sure I raised.
I wasn't part of that one. I think I was traveling but I remember
you were in Florida, I think.
Yeah, I was in Florida.
Yeah, so I was furious when that happened. I was like, they didn't throw him out of the game either. Like, that was a disgrace. And they let him play in the March Madness, and yeah, I don't know. I was mad, but I'm excited to see what they can do this year. I am very excited to see what they can do to this year. And I really just college basketball as a whole this year is just really interesting because I don't think there's one team out there that everyone's expecting to be really good. You know, I mean, obviously Gonzaga's preseason ranked number 1. Once again, they came up short in the Final Four. They lost in the national title game, got blown out by Baylor. Are they ever going to win a national title? They're starting to feel like the Buffalo Bills. You know, like they're getting there. They're in the Final Four constantly, but they can't win the national title. You know, it's part of it because they're not playing enough tough teams when their non-conference is loaded with good teams. But they just can't pull it off. You know, I don't know if there's a Brazilian team that's like a Gonzaga who is consistently really, really good, but maybe because of weaker competition, they just don't have what it takes in the postseason.
I mean, here's kind of because of course, you know, in America there's more sports. Of course, in Brazil you play, you know, there's no conference or like, you know, you play. I'm trying to think outside of soccer, it's something like this happen. You know, a team that always came up short and always full of expectations to win. I mean, maybe I can compare it to the São Caetano in the early 2000s. So there's this little team named São Caetano. They had a really, really quick, you know, promotion. They went to the first division in 2000. They came up short. They won second place. In the lost to the final. Then 2001, they came to the final again, and they lost it again. And then 2002, they went to the South American Championship final. I mean, biggest moment in their whole life, and they lost it again. And then they just disappeared, and they come back to being a small team. But that's what I remember. You know, a team that came up short so many times. They had a good, you know, players and all, but they just couldn't deliver in the big games.
Yeah, I think Mark View as a coach, they got to find a way to get the big one because all this will be for naught if they can never win a national title. Um, of course, UCLA is up there. Duke beat Kentucky last night. They looked pretty good with Pablo Branchero. Kansas beat Michigan State. They're number 3. Obviously, I didn't get to watch them because I was watching my Vols. So there's just a lot of interesting teams. Obviously, it'll unravel a lot over the next couple of months, and we'll be definitely talking about it periodically. And briefly, before I throw it over to you for Brazilian topics, I want to shout out Kyle Larson winning the NASCAR Cup Series championship. He had 10 wins this season. The last driver to do that was Jimmy Johnson back in 2007. Of course, the driver with the most wins in the modern era of NASCAR is Jeff Gordon, had 13 back in 1998 in his championship season. So Kyle Larson, of course, you remember last year he said a racial slur while playing a video game. He got fired. He got booted from the sport of NASCAR for the rest of the season. Comes back this year and just lights the world on fire, even beyond NASCAR. Like he won the Knoxville Nationals dirt races, won everything in dirt. He's going to try to run the Indianapolis 500 next year. At least is what the rumors are saying. So he's trying to make a case maybe for him being the best driver in the world. Of course, I would love to see him go run F1 at some point, and we'll see how he stacks up against the likes of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. But Kyle Larson, he's one of the best NASCAR drivers I've ever seen. And obviously, outside of that, staying on his legacy from last season, certainly this goes to show that America is the land of second chances. And we'll see how many championships he can truly win, because if he can drive at this level, he can win multiple championships, because he's by far one of the best talents I think the sport of NASCAR has ever seen.
Yeah, shout out to Cicero asking, you think is asking about Brazilian basketball potential to win a gold medal. I mean, to be honest, I was more hopeful in the 2012 and 2016 Olympics because of the work of Magnano, and we had promising players from the NBA, Varejão, Leandrinho. We also had Caboclo and Raulzinho. But I think one generation is ending and another one's still developing. So I think Brazilian basketball is still in transition time, because a lot of those players retire, like Varejão, I think he's close to retirement. Leandrinho, I think he's close or even retired. And no new players will emerge, and hopefully we'll go to NBA. But I think Brazilian basketball right now is a very transition, times, and hopefully they can match up again. I will never forget 2012 matchup between U.S. and Brazil in basketball. I rooted so bad for Brazil that game. It was a really, really, big game. 2012. It was, a battle. Was a battle. Was a sellout crowd in DC. It's like I think it was some sort of a to get to the Olympics, but it was a big game back in July. It wasn't my birthday. That's what I remember. It was on my birthday, 2012, the U.S. versus Brazil game. But and speaking of Brazil, real quick,
and also, I got a brief point though to make. This might be bad to admit, but honestly, when it comes to international basketball, I kind of root against the U.S. just because we're expected to win. We've got all the best players. Like, I love to see upsets when it comes to basketball, and I love to see other countries be good at basketball. Like, we shouldn't win every single time. Like, it's boring. I don't care that the U.S. wins gold. Like, I don't care that they won gold in the last Olympics. So, when France beat the U.S., I mean, that was like the craziest. That was like one of the craziest basketball games I've ever seen. Because I'm just like, how does a team led by Kevin Durant and Damian Lillard lose to France or lose to Senegal? It's just like that. I mean, that is hilarious to me. And that's just really impressive on the other country's part to beat a U.S. team led by a bunch of NBA stars. So it's not like the one U.S. like national team I root for, like obviously U.S. soccer, because they're not the best team by any stretch of imaginations. They actually get to be underdogs. USA hockey, because they're always second to Canada, it seems. But like when it comes to USA basketball, I kind of want to see other countries beat them just because they're expected to win.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever feel, because I certainly know you don't feel about that way about Brazilian soccer, because obviously there's a lot of other top soccer nations too they have to beat. So it's a different dynamic, because like in soccer you have
I think volleyball became like that. I think volleyball became more than soccer, because Brazil dominated volleyball in men's and women's for the past 2 decades. Brazil, won the gold medal in volleyball. I think it men in 2004, and then women 2008, and then I think in 2012 and 2016 again. So, and when Brazilian volleyball men didn't even won a gold, won a medal, not even a bronze, there was a lot of pushback. So Brazilian, Olympic teams is more expected in volleyball than soccer. I know soccer won the gold medal back to back again, but I think volleyball is more pressure than football and soccer, just because soccer, there's so many soccer nations, and Brazil became this volleyball country, and people embrace it.
Yeah, plus winning the World Cup is just such a massive deal for whoever wins it, regardless of how many
Yeah.
times you win it. Like they're doing the Patriots won 6 times in the last 20 years, but it's big every single time you win it. So it's not like the gold medal when it comes to basketball because I mean it's a shocker when we don't win it. So
And and
yeah,
speaking of pressure, I have to bring Flamengo, because Flamengo right now, you know, last month everybody was expecting Flamengo to roll in all the competition, to win Libertadores final, to even maybe come close and even surpass Atlético Mineiro and win again the Brazilian Championship and even the Brazilian Cup, because they seem unbeatable. And now, they got another, bad result, the tie with the last place Chapecoense. I know it was a huge VAR controversy because they even couldn't see the they called an offside and the player was before the midfield, and it was the rule is obvious. When the pass comes, it's like a lateral. You can do a lateral after you're doing one forward pass. In soccer as well, if when you pass the ball and the player is before the midfield, even with there's no other players in front of you, it's still good because you're before the midfield. But they couldn't see that. But despite all this controversy about referees, Flamengo right now is in a very turmoil. There were fans like going in front of their headquarters, in front of their like training center, like graffitiing and protesting. And São
sounds
Paulo
like
just,
Tennessee fans.
yeah, yeah, really. And São Paulo just scored a beautiful goal, really, really beautiful, big shot. Sorry, it just got distracted. It was so beautiful. And but the I think the fans, so I think Brazil, Flamengo fans are so delusional. They're so like expecting to win everything. They're like oh my god, since we have the most expensive team with the best players, we have to have everything. And even some journalists in Brazil are like if you call yourself the best, you don't enjoy the ride. So I think Flamengo fans right now have to help the team more than kind of put more pressure on it, because they clearly are on a marathon. They're right now, they let me see like how many games, but I think it was like 3 games in 6 days, but it was insane the amount of games
Yeah,
they have to
we
play.
discussed this because we discussed this almost a week or two ago about just how insane the sports schedule is down there and how some teams are getting too many games and some teams are not getting enough games.
Yeah, so
And
Flamengo
yeah,
right now, they play on Saturday, they then play on Monday, then they're gonna play on Thursday, and then they're gonna play on Sunday. So in a spare of, let me check. So December 30 to like 2 weeks, they're playing one like 4 games in 14 days. It's crazy. It's almost like, you know, uh, it's like 3 game, one game every 3.5 days. So you can't really coach a team. So it's really unfair to criticize the coach when you don't have the time to practice. When you finish a game, fly back to where fly back to your city, then you rest, then you maybe coach one day, and then you go to the hotel or travel again to play another team. So in this insane schedule, like of course Flamengo's, and then Flamengo has players call up recently for international duty that got injured. Players who were just exhausted because Brazil did not have a off season. Players are playing nonstop since sports came back in July 2020. There was not an off season when the Brazilian Championship finish. I think was like and was like February, they just started 2021 season again. So with all of that, and Flamengo play a lot of games last season, and then in this season, so I mean Flamengo has a talent. I think they're still the favorites versus Palmeiras to win the Libertadores, but it's just insane that Flamengo fans think that it's all the coach's fault and not the like calendar and exhaustion and injuries.
Yeah, I mean, it just sometimes when the desire to pursue a profit overtakes the concern for injury, it's
and,
not
and,
good at
and, not,
all.
and not even versus the profit, it's just organization because the Brazilian soccer does not have a league, does not have a commissioner. It
Right?
has like some sort of confederation. Brazilian soccer is run as like a TSSAA. Is run like a you know like a
Should they
amateur.
have one? Like,
Yeah, they should. Yeah, they should, but the teams are not unified. The Flamengo, big example of that. All the teams got in a room to decide, fans how they're gonna come back. When they're gonna fans come back to the city. I think it was last month. All 19 teams from the first division were in the room to discuss. Flamengo was the only one who wasn't there. Flamengo, like, they issued a letter complaining a lot of things about organization, about the Brazilian Soccer Confederation, all this stuff. But a lot of points go to show that soccer teams in Brazil are not unified. They don't think professionally. They still run as they were like some sort of a small club from the 50s when there was the president and there was like some sort of a association group. Like sports has changed. In the 21st century, you have to have an organized, professional organization with commissioner, with like a schedule, with profession. I go back to professionalism because until Brazilian soccer runs as a 20th century mentality, problems will still exist. And as to the question for referees being, it's crazy here in Brazil. Referees are not professional. They're not like full time. They're just part time. They just on Sunday they're refereeing a really big match that involves millions of reais. On Monday they are bank tellers. They work on banks. They work on, I don't know, management. They work on other professionals. And
yeah,
who,
same deal here for SEC football, and that's why you see so many terrible calls.
yeah. But the question is, who that interest is? Like who profits over this? Who, because if something bad happens in professional sports, because SEC football is professional sports, let's not be kidding. There's a reason why things don't get fixed sometimes. That's the big question in Brazil for calendar, for refereeing. But I think Flamengo is still going to recover. They, of course, they had a huge tie, but before that, they won a big game. They won. They only lost one game out of the last five, so I think they will recover. But the question is, his opponent in the Libertadores final. How about Palmeiras? Sixth win in a row, 4-0 tonight versus Atlético Goianiense. Rafael Veiga. Oh my God, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
He's playing
I don't know how good
phenomenal.
their opponent was, but winning 4-0 in any soccer game is impressive.
His opponents were okay. I mean, Atlético Goianiense is kind of like the mid-table, is like 14th place, but Rafael Veiga, MLS teams are it should be a look. I don't, you know, probably European team will go first, but Rafael Veiga, what he is playing phenomenal. He is one of the classic midfielders who knows how to assist, who can score, who can shoot. So he is doing phenomenal. He's one of the main players for Abel Ferreira and also Gustavo Scarpa, who was in the bench, who wasn't playing very well, came back to the first 11 and also be playing good. So I'm so excited for November 27th, the Libertadores final day. And because a month ago, everybody thought Flamengo was going to destroy Palmeiras. And now it's the other way around. Like, people are like, is Palmeiras good enough to beat strong Flamengo? Like, that's the big question. And another topic, Brazilian sports, Atlético Mineiro, another win, their third win in the last 5 games, 3-0 over my Corinthians. And they're really close to the title. They are 10 points ahead of Palmeiras with 7 games remaining for both of them. Flamengo is 14 points behind Atlético Mineiro, but Flamengo has 2 games less than Palmeiras and Atlético Mineiro that Flamengo still have to play. So I think Atlético Mineiro is going to win the Brazilian Championship, something they haven't won for 40 years. 40. The last time they won the Brazilian League was 1971, which was the first like full edition, like first professional edition. So the fans are so excited to win. They're like, cannot wait because this title has been over the head because their rival Cruzeiro has won so many times. They won back to back 2013, 2014. So this is a title Atlético Mineiro fans cannot wait to win because their rival won like I think 4 times, and they won back to back 2013 and 2014. And last is the water rivalry. Internacional defeated Grêmio 1-0 at home. But the big story is in the end because Grêmio is in the relegation zone. They're 7 points, behind Bahia. Oh my God, Jesus, what a goal!
Yeah, relegation. I mean, and this is a concept to me that, like, you don't see this in America, but I think it would just add a whole other level to get rid of some teams that are just constantly terrible. Like the Detroit Lions, for example, deserve to be relegated just for constantly being awful. But there's nowhere to relegate them to.
Relegation fights are so awesome. Like, because it involves another. Because if it wasn't for relegation, let's say 13th place to 20th place, they wouldn't play for anything. And I like the concept of relegation zone because it gives an urgency to the tournament, especially a tournament like EPL or Brazilian League where they don't have a playoff at the end. So it's really urgency.
Oh, absolutely. Because here, like in America, you have tanking. And people sometimes will purposely lose games to get the first pick. In the NFL, there's nothing stopping you from going 0-17 and getting the number 1 pick next year. But
I think would be awesome because the thing is, and not like create just keep the same league. But if you don't go, the last 4, I don't know, like the last 10 have to then play some sort of a tournament then next year to see if they're going to get in or something. I don't know how to make it. I know in America it's more complicated because, teams are franchises. So when you buy a franchise, you want to play NBA. You don't want to play second division.
I mean, this is the reason why we saw Super League try to become a thing during the summer last year because the owners didn't want to take that financial risk anymore. Over in like England and France, Spain.
More Spain. I think more Spain because English teams are still gonna have a strong league and gonna get revenue. Spanish teams are just know they're doomed because their league is just weak. The rest of even if Barcelona is bankrupt, why do you think it's happening to Valencia, Sevilla, Betis, and other?
How is Barcelona bankrupt? Like, how did that happen? I mean, you look at there on TV; they have 100,000 fans in the stands, and
simple because Barcelona is not run as a business. It's run like a professional business. It's run like some sort of a politics. It's run as a country. There was a president who got elected who went on a massive spending tree with players that didn't play anything, and
like how much of that is tied to like the fact that people in that region want to like have their own country in Catalonia, but then the main government back in Madrid won't let them.
I probably don't. I think Barcelona, as like the football club Barcelona, still wants to be connected to Spain because they know that they would have massive consequences to not. Because imagine if Barcelona wants to join the Super League because they don't want to play in the Spanish league because they know how bad. Imagine playing a Catalonia league. It would be like Barcelona, Espanyol, and maybe some like regional teams. So Barcelona as a club, I don't think they want to get involved in the topic when the talks were huge.
Because like if it did happen, let's just say for somehow Catalonia became its own country, would Barcelona have a choice to stay in La Liga, or would they be just screwed? Because like I mean, for example, like Monaco,
they'll be kicked out. They'll be kicked out. There was already kind of like talks with the president of La Liga, and La Liga would definitely kick them out because it's like we're in Spanish league and you're not Spain anymore. You'll be kicked out. You and Espanyol and other teams that were like regional team, but the two biggest one in Barcelona and Espanyol, they will have to form their own league.
Like, I wonder if they could be like a Monaco where like they get to play in the French league, even though they're technically not France.
No. because it would be so much of revenge. Like, don't you think the Spanish government will push the La Liga, like, in Spanish soccer is run as a politics, so it's not, they don't have a commissioner, they have a president. So since the soccer federation, the soccer organization in Spain, like in Brazil, is politics, don't you think in Spanish actual politics will play a role into kick Barcelona out to, like, kind of like retaliation of Catalonia leaving the union?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like from the La Liga standpoint, but I feel like one of the other leagues would be interesting taking on Barcelona just from the point of they have one of the largest fan bases in the world, and that they have that brand. At least when they had Messi, when they had Neymar
I, I
back in the day.
I think then Barcelona fans will not be okay with that. That's the problem. I think because, again, in Spain, like in Brazil, soccer is heavily politics. It's all voting, and you have something called like council. No, I'm trying. I'm gonna try to
Yeah,
translate like the term. Like,
because I mean it's somewhat similar, I guess, to college football and how
they
political
have a
it gets
lot of
here.
advisors. It's not even advisors. Like, they have some sort of a, like, advisor who can vote to get the president. So those people, they really make the call the shots in the club.
Yeah, that's just a really interesting like scenario. I've never really thought about that because you hear about Catalonia sometimes, and people want to start uprisings. And I think a couple years ago they tried it for like a day or two, and Spain wouldn't shut it down. Um, I don't know if they're ever actually going to get to do it. Because I mean, I'm not an expert when it comes to Spanish politics, so I don't know what would
Yeah,
have to happen for Barcelona and Catalonia to be able to succeed, and for what that would mean, and what their relationship would be with Spain, with Andorra and France to the north, and the rest of just the rest of the EU in general. But yeah, and obviously Barcelona. I mean, that would be just a giant crazy because obviously when you think about like in college football, for example, realignment, Texas, for example, is getting a lot of scrutiny from the rest of the Texas universities for going to the SEC. Same with Oklahoma in their state,
I
but it's not because their states are succeeding from the country. Uh,
no,
yeah,
and going back to the comparison, I really wish one day big soccer team Brazil decides to move their headquarters to another state. I wonder what would happen. Because in Brazil, there's more repercussion because you need to be in a state to play the state tournament in order to play the national league. So changing state, because even changing cities here can be traumatic. Imagine if changing states. It would be so. I think that's something that never happened in Brazilian soccer, but it will be interesting to see because I compare that to changing conferences in college athletics. It's like, it's not that simple.
so my question to you is like when it comes because I know some of the cities down there are their own districts, like Brasilia, for example. I think some of the other major cities are like separate from the states themselves. If
Mm,
I'm, am I not
only
correct? Because I know like I was
Brazilian.
like it's like DC, how Washington DC, it's its own district, is not technically in the state.
I think only Brasilia has their own state, which is the federal district, which is like DC. But I think only that. But Brazil don't even have counties. We have cities, states, and country. That's all. And then because Brazilian soccer is so connected still to old mentality, it's like state. Because the presidents of the state federations of soccer elect the Brazilian Soccer Federation president. So state soccer politics influence a lot of national soccer, interest. So that's why, and a lot of journalists, a lot of media, and a lot of fans were like, why do we still have to play the state tournaments at the beginning of the year? Playing a lot of meaningful like meaningless games with teams that are not interesting, and I want to maybe go play in Europe, and promote my brand, play friendly games there, or maybe have a better off season and have a actual preseason. But they're still tied to old traditions and still old mentality. And speaking of old mentality, can I already go to my hot topic?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's go. Hot topics is our favorite part of the show here, where we each share a hot take that we have. Go first, Gus.
And speaking of old mentality, what the hell is happening to Clube Regatas Vasco da Gama, a huge team with one of the largest fan base in the world with more than 10 million fans, in Brazil and around the world. I mean, they won the South American Champions League in 1998. They won many Brazilian national championship, Brazilian Cup, many state titles, successful team. But they're on the lowest. They're in the second division. But normally when they play the second division, in the last 5 years, they always relegated and they go back promoted. Relegated, they go back to promoted. But not this time. They're gonna stay in the second division again, and they don't have a direction. They don't know where to go. This weekend, they lost to one of their biggest rival, Botafogo, who also got relegated and gonna get promoted. They won. They lost 4-0, and the fans are just disillusioned. It's like, what's happening to my team? Are we gonna be in the second division again? What happened to my brand? We used to be one of the biggest soccer powers in Brazil, competing in the national, international level, and now we cannot even. We don't even. We are even out of the first division. We are in the second division. We don't even win the state tournament or even get to the final of the state tournament anymore. They got kicked him out in the first, in the the first stage. So I just feel sad for Vasco fans because they are fanatics. I cover a game of them. I cover a Vasco game last week, and a scene that caught my eyes. The team was arriving to the stadium, and the fans just gathered to the bus, just shouting and happy and taking pictures and just kind of like devoted fans who even their team are on their lowest still love their team because they still remember the good times. But it's getting to a point that is very depressing seeing a big powerhouse like Vasco in that situation.
Yeah, and I can relate to that as a Tennessee fan, just not being the powerhouse anymore that your team was. And especially, I guess, for a lot of those younger fans, and that's really who I empathize with the situation because those younger fans probably don't remember the great times that
Yeah,
club had in the past. And because I can't remember when Tennessee was great back in the 90s and before. Hopefully, we become great here in the future so I can probably experience some of those times. But um, yeah, I mean, obviously, some of the dynamics there, has the modern game changed beyond their capabilities? How are they
and,
just
and,
unable to get the talent
and even
anymore?
and even compared to Tennessee football, is the way to administer a team got old the way because maybe in the past this kind of like politics and administer in a more politician way, more like oh we're gonna win because we're big worked, but now it doesn't anymore. Because the sport, soccer and football right now needs you to be on the most professional and the most top always because they're so high profile games and high profile teams. So
Yeah, you need more analytics and stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
you need a
more
modern
analytics.
approach to the game.
Yeah, they lost it again, 3-0 at home to Victoria, which was the 18th place out of 20 teams. So Vasco lost 4 games in a row. They're not gonna get promoted. They're fan. I don't think they're gonna have a. I think they're safe for relegation for the third division because the amount of points they already have. But still, though, and I feel like of course, Tennessee's not getting to that point because there's no relegation in the SEC, but they're comparable because Vasco's biggest year was 1998 when they won the state tournament, the South American, Champions League, and almost head to head to Real Madrid. They lost to the final minute, and after that they won just maybe one Brazilian league in 2000 with a huge controversy because in the final match it was had to be stopped because of overcrowding and stampede, and then the second game play they won and the 2011 Brazilian Cup, but after that they haven't won anything. They have been relevant.
Yeah, I mean that's insane. Like how much that correlates with Tennessee football. And also, the topic of crowd crushing stampedes. That's unfortunately been back in the news here in America again, recently with obviously what happened to Asheville the other day. And FC our condolences, prayers, and condolences go out to all those victims. But hopefully Vasco can get it figured out. In the
I hope
years to
too
come.
because I hope too because seeing their fans last week and it just show uh, how they're still a big powerhouse, massive number of fans, like 10 million fans. It's a huge number, and they're so loyal. Like they're the fans I think in maybe in the world, but in the top 10 in the world with most like see not because not season ticket holders, like they're like shareholders. They literally are like, kind of like, they have like a season ticket, or even they're like membership. They have the team with the most members on the membership club, because their fans are so loyal. They help with, GoFundMe campaigns to build like a training center, or to help build something, because their fans love their team so much, and they want to help. But you cannot ask the fans to fund their mistakes all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much that you can do as a shareholder and a fan. All at the end of the day, it comes to the coaches, to the players, to the general manager, and we'll see what Vasco can do moving forward. Maybe they can get out of Serie B next year and get back to that top division
Uh,
and build
yeah,
back up.
yeah, that's all the fans hope.
Yeah, but I kind of want to switch on over to my hot take to finish this episode, because I got a doozy of a hot take here, and I don't know if this is really going to happen or not, but I can just feel it. You feel the wind in the air. A lot of people have been talking about Dan Mullen getting fired at Florida, but I kind of want to bring up a different coach in a different sport. John Calipari, Coach Cal, Kentucky, national champion in 2012, has been really good at every stop, although pretty controversial. I mean, he cheated at Memphis, cheated at UMass, probably is cheating at Kentucky, but that's probably just a bias of being a Tennessee fan coming out. Um, but let's be honest, he's kind of underachieved a little bit with all the talent that he's had with the John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins and Tyler Harrow and just all this other talent that comes through Kentucky. He's only won one national title with Anthony Davis. They were 9-16 last year. They didn't make the tournament. They got beat last night by Duke. Were down by like 17 at one point. They just could not shoot. They almost came back, trying to make it close, but just didn't have anything for Coach K in his final season. My final take: I think John Calipari gets fired this year. I really do. I don't. If Kentucky doesn't get it figured out, if they don't win the SEC, and the SEC is going to be tough this year because you got Alabama, you've got Tennessee, you've got Arkansas, potentially Auburn, LSU, a lot of really good teams. Kentucky no longer scares me as a top team in the SEC anymore. Calipari has a losing record of Rick Barnes, who's had mostly worse teams in the same time frame in terms of just comparable talent. If you look at recruiting and everything like that, I mean, John Calipari does less with more than any coach in college basketball. And I really think if you look at Kentucky basketball fans, they're starting to get kind of fed up with it because they expect to be national title contenders every single year. They've been good. They haven't been good enough. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of Mark Richt at Georgia, because Kentucky should be a top 5 team nearly every single season when you think about the talent they can attract and whatnot. And part of that, I think, is the one and dones kind of making it difficult for them to be good on a year-to-year basis. But I get the feeling that Calipari's getting older anyway. His time has to be running short at Kentucky, and if they don't, go out, win the SEC this year, make a deep run in March, don't be surprised if Kentucky starts thinking about their future and about a way to get back to the level that they know they can be at Kentucky. It's been a couple of years since they've been to the Final Four. They've blown a couple of really nice chances. They had that one year where they almost went 40-0. I think that was like 2014, but they lost to Wisconsin in the Final Four. John Calipari always seems to find a way to blow it in March. And the only time he did it, he had Anthony Davis, who's literally a top 5 player in the NBA right now. And I might just be a Tennessee fan saying this, but I think John Calipari, he should watch out, because he needs to win big this year, I think, or otherwise his seat is going to get very, very, very hot. What do you think about that, Gus? Do you think that's too outrageous of a take?
No, I mean, I remember when Tennessee defeated Kentucky. I think when Kentucky was like top 5 ranked, Tennessee was unranked, and they came to Thompson Bowling and they lost. It was a sign already of decline. Kentucky basketball is Tennessee football. They're in decline, and and we can compare. And I think it's fair to compare Calipari to Philip Fulmer. They both won national championship. They stay forever, and they maybe underachieve with a lot of talent. And I think by the end, fans are gonna get tired. And I think I think he is gonna get fired. Maybe this season, maybe next season, because. And of course, you can blame the one and done culture, but that's for all the teams. Like, adapt, or because Death or die. It's
Like
like,
you got to have a mix. You have to have a mix of guys.
yeah, yeah, and then you have to go other teams. Like, what is Gonzaga's doing that I'm not? What Baylor's doing? Like, have the humility to go
Yeah.
see what other teams are doing.
Like, why did Alabama come in all of a sudden and win the SEC last year?
Yeah,
No.
like, because maybe you're so caught up in your own way because you think it always worked. But if recently it's not, you have to see what other teams is doing.
Absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see what Kentucky do. The SEC this year is going to be really, really exciting. But that's all the time that we have for Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, episode 4. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Definitely a serious start to the show, but I think we had a lot of fun in the back end. Come back. I will announce whenever the next episode is. I think we're going to try to do it Tuesdays at 7 from now on. But 7 p.m. Eastern, that is. So that's 9 p.m. in Brazil. I know because we went back an hour, so we wanted to do it a little bit early because I did not want him to have to do the show at midnight. But
Thank you.
No problem. But anyway, I'm Nicholas Hill. That's Gustavo Tomazeli. Thank you for listening to Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. We'll catch you next time. Take care.
We beat the fire starter, bubbling up just like lava, heated like